Today we're doing the Chemical Reactions Lab for Unit 8 of Chemistry. Be sure when you begin the lab that you have all of your personal protective equipment, such as your goggles, chemical-resistant gloves, apron. Be sure to review your SDS sheets, as well as your activity series chart. In the first station, we will be combining aluminum with copper 2 chloride solution. The first thing you'll need to do is squeeze 2 pipettes of copper 2 chloride solution into a clean, dry test tube. Return the pipette to the beaker after you're done for storage. Close the lid of the copper 2 chloride solution when you're finished. Put a thermometer in the test tube. Record the temperature of the thermometer to 1 degree in your lab notebook. Be sure to use ink when you're recording your observations. This temperature is 20.0 degrees Celsius. Remove the thermometer. Add the strip of aluminum to the test tube so that it's submerged in the solution. Don't cram it down. Wait approximately 1 minute, put the thermometer back in, and record the new temperature. Also record any other observations about what's happening in the liquid. You may notice bubbles, and you'll certainly notice that the temperature increases over time. After a few minutes, your physical observations should look like this. Please note that in this single displacement reaction, aluminum is replacing copper in solution. Dispose of all the materials appropriately according to the procedures. In the next station, we're going to be combining copper metal with a silver nitrate solution. First, you'll need to cut a 4-inch piece of copper wire. Using a stirring rod, coil the wire according to the diagram in your procedures and like is demonstrated. Bend a hook at the top of the wire so that the wire can hang from the glass rod. Okay. Be sure that the coil does not touch the bottom or the sides of the beaker. Remove the copper wire now and you'll put it back in later. Add 30 milliliters of distilled water to the beaker. You can use the 30 milliliter mark on the beaker to indicate that you have 30 milliliters of water. Using a pipette, add 10 milliliters of silver nitrate solution so that the total volume of liquid is 40 milliliters. After you have 40 milliliters of solution, put the lid back on the container. Carefully suspend the wire into the solution using the glass rod as shown. Wait about 1 minute and record your observations in your lab notebook. After you wait a minute, you should observe that the silver is precipitating out on the copper wire as shown. If you'll pull it out of the container, you can see it even more clearly. Record all of your observations in your lab notebook and be sure to use the disposal procedures as shown. The next station is a double displacement reaction between copper chloride and sodium phosphate. First, add 1 pipette of copper 2 chloride solution to a clean test tube. Return the pipette to the appropriate storage beaker and put the lid on the container. Record the color and clarity of the solution in your lab notebook. Be sure to include words like, is it transparent? Is it cloudy? Add 1 pipette of sodium phosphate solution to the same test tube. Put the lid back on the container. Now record the color and clarity of the new combined solution. Is it transparent or cloudy? Be sure to use a flashlight to more clearly observe the solution. Okay. After a few minutes, it should look similar to this. After it has a chance to settle out, you can see that there was a precipitate from this double displacement reaction. The next station is combining aluminum metal with sodium hydroxide solution. So first you'll need to take 1 pellet of aluminum out of the container and put it in the well plate. Put the lid back on the container and now add 2 to 3 drops of sodium hydroxide to the aluminum. Be sure to observe what the aluminum looks like before and after you've added the sodium hydroxide. Use your activity series chart to predict what you think might happen. After a few minutes, this is the observation you should see. The next station is adding sodium chloride solution with silver nitrate solution. This is a double displacement reaction. Add 1 pipette of the sodium chloride solution to a clean test tube. Return the pipette to the storage beaker and put the lid on the container. Record the color and clarity of the original solution. Mark the height that corresponds to the same heighted solution above the solution level. You'll use this to add the same amount of distilled water to the test tube as you have of sodium chloride solution. Add the distilled water to the height that you marked so that you have equal amounts of sodium chloride and distilled water. Add 1 micropipette of silver nitrate solution to the same test tube. Record the color and clarity of the new solution. You may use a flashlight if you like to observe more clearly the new solution. After a few minutes, this is what the solution should look like. The next station is adding iron to copper 2 chloride solution. In this case, we're using iron in the form of steel wool. When you first get steel wool, you'll want to twist it so that it makes sort of a cylindrical shape as shown. This makes it easier to remove the steel wool after your experiment. Put a piece of steel wool into one of the parts of your steel plate, your well plate. Now add 2 to 3 drops of copper 2 chloride solution and observe any changes that you might see. Be sure not to touch the steel wool with the pipette. You may need as many as 10 or 15 drops to see any change. When you begin, the steel wool is a gray color. As you notice, the color of the steel wool may change as shown. After a few minutes, you should see an observation similar to this. Record all of your observations in your lab notebook. The last station is combining copper metal with hydrochloric acid. Look at your activity series and predict what you think might happen. First, take 2 to 3 pellets of copper metal and put it into a well plate. Next, add 2 to 3 drops of hydrochloric acid as shown. Record any observations you might note about the color of the solution and the color of the copper. After you wait a few minutes, at least 1 minute, you should note the final results. Be sure to dispose of all chemicals as noted in the directions and remove all of your PPE before leaving the lab.